Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rehman live from Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the super floods of 2022 in Pakistan. Whether you talk about KP, Punjab, Sindh or Balochistan, or perhaps GB also, every single province has been affected. Over 35 million people are suffering at the moment and they are homeless. When you talk about the people living in various camps which are set up by various provincial governments as well as the federal government, that is unbelievable. I think one of the largest displacement in Pakistan. It is believed that 1/3 of Pakistan, as we speak, though the water level has gone down, but still 1/3 of Pakistan is underwater. Just imagine. Most of these villages, the fields, the crops, they have been inundated. And in certain places in Sindh, it has been reported that around 15 to 16 feet of water is still there. Most of these villages, they are submerged. You can hardly see some of the leaves of the trees. Most of these villages, they are totally underwater as we speak. Now, when we talk about the acute shortage of water, clean drinking water I'm talking about, that's one problem. You talk about shortage of food, that is another problem. Whether you can send the cooked food, but for how long? Because the infrastructure has been totally destroyed. Almost 250 bridges have been washed away by these floods. 250, imagine. More than 6,500 kilometers of road has also been destroyed. Currently, there are about 650 pregnant women all over Pakistan, out of which around 100,000 will give birth in only Sindh, just imagine. And then you talk about diseases which are waterborne diseases primarily, whether you talk about cholera, malaria, dengue, skin disease, diarrhea, they are there. Now that is the real challenge. Though the international community has helped Pakistan, but that is equivalent to just a drop in the ocean. You talk about the statements being issued by the United Nations Secretary General. Yes, he says that this particular monsoon was on steroids. You can well imagine the kind of torrential rain that has been reported, 500% more than normal in Sindh. And when you talk about overall Pakistan, around 400%. Flash floods have occurred in KP, in Balochistan. You talk about the largest lake in Pakistan, that is Manchar Jheel. That's overflowing now. And now a lot of other areas are under threat as well, including Seven. You talk about Larkana, you talk about DGK, you talk about so many other places in Sindh, totally gone. And we're not even sure that whether these people will be able to cultivate their next crop in the next season or not. Almost 1.5 million, that's close to 15 lakh houses have been destroyed. Almost a similar number of livestock has been lost as well. No food, no fodder for the animals either. Now, this is what the situation is as we speak. Now, talking about the deaths, they are rising on almost daily basis, almost close to 1,500. Remember, in 2010, we lost around 1,700 people. Now, we are not even sure the cost of the damages. According to the federal government, that's hovering around $10 billion, but perhaps this is going to double or maybe tripling after a month when we'll get to know exactly the magnitude of the problem. At the same time, having said that, the GDP of Pakistan is going to get affected. Your agriculture sector, that is the backbone of your economy, could be having the negative growth in the coming days. Now, this is what the reality is. Before I introduce you to our panelists, our production team has prepared a report. Let's watch that first.
Disastrous floods and torrential rains in Pakistan have claimed 1,343 lives, injured 12,720 people, and killed 7,51,145 livestock, and ravaged 16,93,361 houses, 246 bridges, and 6,579 kilometers of roads, and shook the socio-economic roots of the nation in the worst possible manner. All the institutions of the country under the leadership of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif are doing their best to provide immediate relief and in longer term rehabilitate the flood affectees. In this regard, according to the details shared by the National Flood Response and Coordination Center, Pakistan Army has so far distributed 4,377.9 tons of food, 887 tons of sustenance items, and over 2.5 million medicine items amongst the flood victims. Moreover, Pakistan Army has established 147 relief camps in Sindh, South Punjab and Balochistan. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has also left for Pakistan for his 2-day visit to express his deep solidarity with the Pakistani people hit by devastating flooding, saying he would also appeal for the international community's massive support to them in this hour of need. In his recent briefing, spokesman Stephanie Dujarric said that food and cash assistance has been delivered to at least 336,000 affected people in Balochistan. He added that distributions are currently underway for 1,17,000 people in Sindh, and the United Nations team has also provided 32 metric tons of emergency supplies to support children and women, including medicines and medical supplies, water purifying tablets, safe delivery kits, and therapeutic nutritional supplements.
Now, to talk about this, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio on my right is Waqar Sherazi Saab, expert on disaster response. Thank you very much, Sherazi Saab, for your presence, sir. And on Skype, we have with us PJ Mir Saab, senior journalist, senior anchor person, and a political commentator. Thank you very much, Mir Saab, for your time as well. And we'll also be talking to Ambassador Shahid MG Kiani Saab, senior diplomat, and we'll take his comments as well, sir. But let me start off from you, Waqar Sherazi Saab. Now, the magnitude of the problem is right in front of you, and this is going to multiply. It is not going to decrease in the coming days. There is another rain spell expected in the coming days around mid of September. But having said that, sir, if the water recedes, we'll get to know exactly what the problem is. But currently there are certain villages that are totally submerged underwater. 16 to 20 feet of water as well in certain areas. You talk about Sindh, which is mostly facing the main brunt of this super monsoon, and the data which we have is very, very scary. Now, forget about the rescue, because we are still in the rescue operation. Relief is going to come later in certain areas. The relief has started as well. But having said that, the rehabilitation and then the reconstruction process, this is going to take years and years.
It will.
Not sure about the future crop. 1.4 million acres of land where cotton was cultivated, it's totally gone. Your sugarcane, your wheat, rice, pulses, onions, tomatoes, fruit, vegetable, and whatever has been saved is still stuck in the trucks and the lorries, which was supposed to be delivered to major cities, because there is no infrastructure. Earlier, as I mentioned, around 250 bridges have been destroyed, and over 6,500 kilometers of road has been washed away. Linkages between major cities or the connections that do not exist anymore. Now, since you're somebody who's an expert on disaster response, sir, do you think whatever the government is doing, whatever the international community is doing so far, is that enough? Or do you think that this should be taken up by the United Nations as a major catastrophe of these, I would say, of which we have witnessed during the last couple of decades? And we need help, just like they helped the Lankans or the Indians or people in Indonesia or elsewhere when this tsunami struck in 2004, or the earthquake of 2005, or perhaps the tsunami and the earthquake of 2011 in Japan, though Japan had a lot of resources, but over here, sir, we do lack in every respect. Your take.
Well, Faisal, many thanks indeed for having me here today. I think you have said it all in your comprehensive introduction. We were hit by the catastrophe at an epic scale. Everybody knows it. But unfortunately, the response from the government institutes, either it is provincial government, local government or federal government, it is inadequate, because no government in the world has the capacity to react and respond to a catastrophe on such a massive scale, which we have witnessed in recent past in last 15 days. And let me share that at the moment it is a majority of the response is by local volunteers, and we will be observing that in very few days the response from those volunteers will be reducing drastically, because it would be like a social media trend. As soon as it will be a hot debate in social media, the people will react to it. They will keep on providing the aid, though on a limited scale, but when it will be washed from their memories, and it is going to happen very soon. We will certainly be entering to a humanitarian crisis. I think the humanitarian crisis is already there, as you have shared that the losses are very huge. More than 256 bridges have been swept away, 7,000 kilometers of road, hundreds and thousands of acres of cultivated fields, and everything, and the precious lives and the livestock and rest of the things have been lost. I am sharing with you that we are about to enter a food crisis or a food security situation in Pakistan as well, because for the next crop, the land would not be ready in 3 to 6 months because of the water logging and rest of the flash floods in many of the areas of Pakistan. So, and beyond that, farmers have lost their seed bank as well, because they had stored the seeds in their local storages, which has been swept away by the floods. So, if we didn't respond to all of the aspects, we will not only be suffering in terms of humanitarian crisis, in terms of health of women and children and elders, but in terms of disease outbreak like dengue, cholera, as you have already mentioned, and malaria and rest of the diseases. At the moment, when I was discussing it today and yesterday with many of the volunteers throughout Pakistan, and I asked that, did you include the chlorine tablets in your aid? The answer was no. I asked that, did you include the rash cream in your packages? The answer was no. I asked, did you include the sanitary pads in your packages? The answer was no. Because the flood response or the emergency response is a science. It's an informed decision. There are skills and experiences involved in any particular response to a particular catastrophe. But volunteers are not professionals. They are there in the field because of their passion and because of the sufferings of the people, but they do not know how to react to a catastrophe and how to cater for the needs of the people.
What to do and how to do it.
What to do and how to do it. Unfortunately, in the year 2010, when we were hit by a super flood, at Pakistan Humanitarian Forum, there were more than 100 international INGOs, which we say INGOs, registered at Pakistan Humanitarian Forum. But after 2010, there was a drastic change in our policies, and because of those policies, many of the INGOs had to leave Pakistan. And this is the phenomenon now, that this is the dilemma now, that we are hit by again a larger flood than 2010, but there are no skilled labor force or no capacity in Pakistan to help and respond to the people who have been struck by such a massive catastrophe. So I think Pakistan will have to give an emergency call to the international community, to the INGOs, to join Pakistan and to help the people, those who are hit by the massive floods in the living history of Pakistan.
Well, very well explained. Now coming to you, Mir Saab, we haven't learnt anything, sir. Whether we talk about the 2005 earthquake, era was there, later on it doesn't exist anymore. You talk about NDMA, I'm not even sure about the role of NDMA, what they are supposed to do, and why do they have that kind of fund, and do they have the capacity to do it? Nothing of that sort. I remember in 2010 during the floods, an organization called Muslim Hands was so active all over Pakistan, along with other political and religious parties, and they were doing a wonderful job, sir, all along with the military and other NGOs. Currently, sir, this scale of the monsoon has never been witnessed by any country. I'll just give you one quick example, sir. Last night I was listening to a couple of intellectuals in India, and they are so well prepared, and they were comparing the drought in China and the floods in certain part and floods in Pakistan, and they said we hardly received 8%, 808% more monsoon this year, but you never know what is going to happen in the coming years or months. Now the interesting part is they are already thinking on those lines, sir. In Pakistan, the Met Office informed us about heavy monsoons and unprecedented rains, but sir, nobody bothered. We were busy in maligning the character of the leaders of different political parties. You put on any television channel and they were not talking about the floods, rather than, you know, how different channels operate and the kind of agenda they are following. If that is the priority, sir, then forget about Pakistan, because this is what Pakistan is going through, sir. Your take.
Faisal, we have to admit where there's failure. NDMA, I think they should rename it as WNDMA, wait for national disaster, then they'll react. We are not, proactive. We're all reactive. And NDMA should have been working on it, even in times when there is no disaster. This should be, a 24/7 agency which should be looking after. I've always maintained that NDMA should work hand in hand with the architects, with the police, with the health authorities, and with the fire brigade, because they must be sitting on one table to give planning permissions. Now, in days gone by, you look at the 18th century Sindh Gazetteer, there were floods then, but the population was less. Today, there's more population, but the terrain is the same. And, we've got the largest number of glaciers in the world here. And what do? We allow people to build, houses and all kinds of, resorts right onto the riverbanks. And when they get eroded, we look for sympathy. No, I don't think there should be sympathy on this, because there should be punishment on this. Who allowed them to build houses on those sites? Because at the end of the day, what we see is debris coming down, the rivers, and we are lamenting, oh my God, what's happening? No, we should time. We can still do it. And all we need to do is sit down and start working for next year. Because next year, again, what we'll do is, as you mentioned, that, we'll be asking for aid. Please help us. Please help us. Look, there's disaster. Look, 2005 earthquake, there's disaster. What did you do? I went to the earthquake areas with the British parliamentarians. And let me tell you, they were warned not to build the houses or whatever shacks they have on top of the mountains, because they're movable mountains, but they still did it. Now comes the next earthquake, they'll all come down. So who's allowed them to do it? The question is, we need to be working seriously as a country. What we do is, and I totally agree with you, all we do is malign our political leadership, left, right, and center, but forget what is actually hurting our country. As you rightly said, 1/3 of the country is underwater, and this is not going to be an easy job for us to rehabilitate. Now, there's a rehabilitation factor. Then you've got the IMF factor, who are already hanging on to you after the floods. Please give us the money. So what we need to do is start thinking much more seriously, and which we are not. The other thing, which I've always maintained, there is no civil defense active in the country. Civil defense is the first line of defense for the civilians. Where is it? Where are the razakars? Where are the trained razakars? Where are the, we don't have a disbursement system. Look at it. NGOs, government, or anybody goes out there to disperse foods. Look at what happens there. There's total chaos. So we need to develop a disbursement system. We need to develop a system for disasters. We don't. We can talk about it. We are very good at talking. But what are we actually doing about it? The other thing is, we need to have trained volunteers. We do not have trained volunteers. Everybody, out there, just does a humanitarian sort of, an exercise. That's not good enough. We need to have people trained. Let me tell you, in the 60s and 70s, all bureaucrats used to be trained by the civil defense. There were civil defense academies in Lahore, Karachi, and of course in Islamabad. And it had just, begun. And you know what training they were giving? They were giving training on nuclear attacks. Nuclear attacks. That is how good our civil defense was. Where is it now? Nowhere. Are the government servants trained for civil defense? No. Are the government trained or the officials trained for first aid? No. Resuscitations and all this? No. We need to revive that. We need to go down to the grassroots level and rethink and review our system. Our system is crumbling, and we cannot let it crumble. Oh yeah, all we can do is, give sympathy to the poor. But why not use that maxim of prevention is better than cure? We don't prevent, but we
That's
ask for
correct.
sympathy from all of. How long will the world be, keeping us,
And Mirsab,
afloat
since we
by
are
the?
one of the most vulnerable countries as far as global warming or climate change is concerned, and our own footprint as far as carbon emission is concerned is less than 1%. But the kind of problems that we will go through in the future also, they will be huge. They're going to be mega challenges in front of us. But unfortunately, we always believe in ad hoc decision-making process. And unfortunately, sir, you rightly said that we are reactive. We are not even reactive. We should have reacted much earlier, sir, when the Met Office decided that there's going to be a heavy monsoon. Nobody cared about it. Not even a single show on the television, sir. They were just, I mean, you know exactly what every single channel was up to. If that is the priority, I would say, Mirza, then God bless Pakistan. Sir, we have also been joined in by Ambassador Shahid M.G. Kiani Saab, former Ambassador, senior diplomat. Kiani Saab, Assalamu alaikum. Shahid Kiani Saab, can you hear me, ji? Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, sir. So if you could speak a little louder, sir.
Yeah.
Now, Kiani Saab, the question is that, sir, you have served as an ambassador in so many countries. Now, don't you think this is the time that our own representatives as ambassadors, as spokesperson out there in so many countries should definitely work on war footings, should try to tell the people that what's exactly going on. Imagine the entire England, that is the size of the area in Pakistan that is underwater.
Yeah.
You're talking about 35 million people, the population of a big European country, close to that, right? But said nothing has been done. I mean, yes, 49 odd shipments coming in from various countries like China, UAE, Turkey, or elsewhere, all the friendly countries. But sir, they are so meager and, primarily I would say just a drop in the ocean. Now the real challenge is going to be right in front of you in the form of these diseases, especially the waterborne diseases, snake bites. We don't even have the vaccination for dog bites. What about the snake bites? These are all realities. No clean drinking water. What is going to happen, sir? Where are we heading?
The thing is, in the foreign service, we are trained that whatever happens in Pakistan, this is the product which you're going to sell abroad. You cannot distort information. And nowadays, I joined the service when there was, you have to read the newspapers black and white, on the paper. Now it's a social media. Our representatives abroad cannot distort information. Whatever is happening in the country, they have to sell that. The unfortunate part is that for the last many years, International Crisis Group in Geneva, the environmental groups in the country, abroad, UN agencies, environment agencies have been telling Pakistan for the last many years to prepare ourselves so as to have, to prepare, Mr. Mir was just talking about it, absolutely the correct thing. And I would just like to add another thing. The abroad, the governments, the international aid agencies, the donor agencies, they exactly know what's happening in our country. 2005 earthquake, 2010 floods, there should have been enough wake-up call for us, but we didn't prepare. Another added thing I will tell you is the absence of local bodies. This is all the political parties are on one page that do not allow the local bodies to work. If the local bodies would have been working, and I can tell you that the job of the armed forces, they are doing a commendable job, or the NDMA would have been much easier because you're going right to the grassroots. People in the local bodies, the workers, exactly know which street, which village, which taluka, which tehsil is far more affected than us. We didn't do that. We didn't allow that to work. And I can assure you one thing. This is a wake-up call, but we are unable to, we will not rise up to the occasion. Now comes to, as you said, that the country submerged, the most important challenge is not feeding the people. That already I'm in touch with Muslim Aid and other agencies, and I have talked to these people. Food is being provided, dry rations being provided. Now you have the tents. People have to be, placed away from the floods, in dry areas tents. The most biggest challenge is that diseases, as you said, snake bites, disease, infectious diseases, and old people, women, and children are the most vulnerable. Are they being helped? Then there is a trust deficit between the people and the government and the donor agencies and the government. But the unfortunate, but the reality is that it is the government of Pakistan which will be in the forefront to repair the infrastructure. It is not the job of the donor agency. Donor agencies can give you the money. They can give you the help. Now this trust deficit has to be this, for example, the money which is pouring in this country. My opinion is after the deluge has ended and everything is done, there should be independent audit of all the money and the cash and kind which has come and should be placed on the website for the donors to see. They're talking about the NDMA. The problem is that no institution in the country is prepared. He's very right, Mr. Mir. What about the civil defense? What about volunteers? Have the people been trained to help and assist those with the vulnerable? This is the worst part. I'll just give you an example. What the deforestation? Look at we allowed these property dealers, the housing societies to mushroom, and they ate up all the agricultural land. Don't go far off. Look at Islamabad. All the madrasas are in the green belt. From whom have they taken the permission? The lungs have been taken up by these people. Billions of rupees worth of property has been eaten up by these madrasas. Have the government ever woken up and talked to these people?
No, sir. That is non-political.
I'm just giving you. No, and listen to me. They are not in somewhere in the places hidden behind the mountains. They are on the main sectors. They are there.
The main Margala Road is full of it, sir. Nobody can do anything.
Yeah,
They're untouchables. But what I'm saying is, sir, obviously, rule of law should be the first priority. But, sir, looking at the current scenario now, I was just going through a couple of articles, sir, very disturbing. Obviously, when you get to know about the magnitude of the problem, that's huge. Now, sir, they say that, impact of the global climate crisis in countries like Pakistan must be shared by the international community. This is what the United Nations Human Rights, the Commission for the Human Rights says. Now, sir, this is why I asked you this question that, we haven't heard much from our ambassadors and the high commissioners abroad that, see, we have been able to muster this sort of amount. So people out there living in those countries, they have a lot of money. But honestly speaking, I mean, there are so many issues in sending that money. I don't want to get into the details about the funds and everything, but the problem is going to be there, sir. This is going to be a regular feature in the future as well. This is going to be something which won't be happening just for once and then we'll wait for. Maybe there is a drought. Maybe there is some sort of an extra spell of rain which can bring in havoc. But what I'm saying is, sir, during these given circumstances, there is no unity within the political parties. There is no consultation. Obviously, Sindh has been almost destroyed. Crops are gone, and God knows, I'll just give you 3 examples, a quick comment, and then I'll come to the guest in my studio. That when the foreign policy we used to read about, Kiani Saab, maybe 10 years ago, military used to make it. It used to be a draft just for the sake of your external security. Then the internal security was included. Now the latest document tells us that food security, your water security, and on top of that, sir, the interesting part is the climate change has also been added in your national security policy. If this is the response regarding the national security policy, sir, then God bless Pakistan.
I just want to allow me to say just one liner. What you are saying is absolutely correct. But I can tell you, all the embassies abroad, I can vouch for it. Brute majority are working, are in touch with the host governments. Reaching out to the Pakistanis is a challenging, very challenging in the present circumstances. I don't want to comment on it.
I understand, Kiani Saab, but the point is that whenever the Prime Minister or the President would go and travel abroad, there is a compulsory, gathering of the Pakistanis there, and then, few would pledge about investments in Pakistan, and then we will just clap and pay for the hotel
forget
bill and
about
everything,
it.
and nothing will
Very
happen.
right.
Don't you think this is the time then the embassies should have something done on war footing, getting the people know what's going on, showing them the visuals, and then asking them for some sort of help? But sir, coming back to you now. Now, sir, you talked about a couple of very important points. I mean, how to respond to a situation like that, because I've covered the 2005 earthquake, I've been covering 2010 floods, and now this time I'm sitting in the studio not even sure what to do and what not to do. Now, the point is, sir, that at least we can bring awareness. We can tell the international community, because English Channel is being watched by a lot of ambassadors and high commissioners living in Pakistan. And honestly speaking, sir, they do understand about the magnitude and the unprecedented, as you and Chief said, this monsoon on steroids. So obviously, sir, we got to know about this phenomena of lakes in the glaciers being formed and then the bursting, and then the phenomena of this cloud that forms, and then we see this rain which might fall in 8 hours will fall in 8 minutes. The cloud burst phenomena. Sir, this is a reality. We are not geared up, and I can give you that in writing. We will never be. And maybe perhaps, God forbid, another 2-3 years down the line, sir, we'll be sitting again and talking about the same, that, we did not learn anything from 2022. What do we need to do?
We are in a situation of panic. Whenever it is a phase for planning, we keep on sleeping. And when we are hit by a calamity or a disaster, we start talking about the planning phase. I think that I agree to the comment of yours and to the Ambassador Saab that it was a diplomatic failure. It was our diplomatic failure that we couldn't tell the world that we are a contributor of less than 1% of the overall carbon footprint of the world, but we are on the top in terms of receiving the bad effects of the climate change.
We could have had aid much prior to the disaster.
Yes, definitely. So right at the moment when we are struck by a calamity and more than 35 million people have been affected, which is a bigger crisis than the Ukrainian crisis, because our population, affected population.
Ukrainians matter to the international Western community.
Yes.
They are getting aid from left, right and center.
That is the reason I am saying
Boris Johnson gives the resignation, and when Liz Truss comes in as the Prime Minister, they are more concerned about Ukrainian and their help and so on and so forth. Look at their media.
So it
the
is
kind
a
of coverage they're getting, because it's a Christian community, a white Christian community of the European Union.
Indeed, indeed.
That is the reason. Let's suppose if climate change was affecting countries like United States of America,
there would be a larger response.
Exactly.
Yeah, certainly. So when we talk about these discriminations, we have been stereotyped that we talk about, we are trying to promote the racism or rest of the things, but the matter of the fact is that we are a victim of this racism, or you can say we feel ousted by them. So I think that indigenously it's a diplomatic failure of government of Pakistan, let's say any of the governments, the present one or the previous one. So right at the moment I believe that we immediately need an international conference in Islamabad, where we should be asking all the INGOs, UN and all the members of all the representatives of the countries of the world, that
we had this OIC conference for Afghanistan, if you remember.
Yeah, and why not for our own people then? So I believe that calling for this conference will speed up the response from the international community. But let me reiterate that within a week or two.
Just give me. So should we expect that? Because if IMF is putting on such crazy conditions, let me use this word, crazy conditions, that people of Pakistan are suffering, yet the fuel prices are going up, inflation has skyrocketed, which is going to go further up. There is going to be an acute shortage of food supply, sir. I can give you that in writing. Look at the prices of onions, tomatoes or vegetables or fruit. They have tripled. I mean, international community should say to the IMF that grant them $5-10 billion, this as aid. And they are squeezing us at just 1.2 billion, sir, which Malik Riaz can always pull in.
Faisal Saab, it sounds good in terms of an ideal scenario, but let me share that IMF is a financial institute and they have no heart, they have no passion, they have no emotional thinking about people. So we should go towards the humanitarian support to the international community that we are hit by a catastrophe unprecedented at global
And
level.
I fail to understand that all these ambassadors are called in the foreign office.
Yeah.
Why not to put them in a helicopter and take them to Sindh, take them to KP, take them to Balochistan and show them that, see, this is what has happened to us.
Our indigenous failure is coupling up with the matter that at the moment we are unable to give precise estimates of losses even. So as the time pass by, we will be providing the enhanced figure of losses, but at that time we will be very late in calling the international support. So we are about to enter a serious humanitarian crisis, because in a week or two the local support or the supply chain of the local support will be discontinued or will be dormant or will be lowered, and then there would be a food crisis, there is a possibility of deaths due to hunger, due to disease outbreak, due to unsupportive, unconducive conditions of weather and rest of the things. And let me share, it is not only a phenomena in the areas where the water logging is a problem. It is also a phenomena where many of the people have been left under the sky, open under the sky, because the flash flood has taken their homes and they are under the sky waiting for any support. And let me share that with the cooked food, you can no longer help the people. You will have to support them in terms of non-food items, that is utensils, that is the washing powder, that is the sanitary pads, that is the medicine, rest of the things. And then you'll have to focus on the early recovery. And after the early recovery, you'll have to work on the rehabilitation. And let me share again that the early recovery and the rehabilitation are very expensive stages. Pakistani people cannot pay for the early recovery and rehabilitation of their brother fellows in the country.
So the government says कि हमारे पास जहर खाने के भी पैसे नहीं हैं.
Yes, it is the.
So if they do not have money to even eat poison, so from where will they bring this money?
Then
sir?
why
because
we
you
are
begging
delaying the
left, right, and center, and nobody is helping you. To be very honest, I mean, being on the state television channel, I've always been told to behave, but reality is the reality. Being a Pakistani, it's more important to come up.
The
with
question is, Faisal,
sir, quick one, then I'll
one
go to
phrase.
Nisab, sir.
Why we are delaying the call for international assistance?
So God knows, sir. I need to ask the same question to Mr. Bilawal Bhutto, who happens to be our foreign minister. Coming to you, Mir Saab, I don't have a question basically, sir, but in your own opinion, now since it has been done, how to move forward?
Look, whatever we are discussing is basically our failure. And then after a failure, we're asking for aid, help us. I mean, look, let's get to grips. We haven't done what we needed to do in our own country, and then we look to the international world for help. No, this is a total failure of our governments, all the governments, because no one has really concentrated on actually working on the environment. You don't have water. Look at the Minister for Environment, Rehman. She says there's going to be no water in 2025. What are you doing about it? Nothing. Then, what we need to do, rather than being critical and criticizing all the time, I think what we need to do is work immediately for next year and for the future. You need to build reservoirs, okay? Forget about the dam, because whoever wants to build about a dam, particularly the Kalabagh Dam, there is controversy all over. Although it's the best place for dams by all leading world experts, including the World Bank. Now,
So primarily your ANP and your Pakistan People's Party should be held responsible for this, sir. They have
Yes,
made it
they
so
were, yes.
politicized that nothing happens. Nobody's ready to take a decision which is not popular among those particular parties, sir.
I totally agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. It should have been done, and it can be done. Okay? Till the time it's done, start building reservoirs around the major cities. Look in the UK, in England, they have reservoirs around all big cities. They don't have natural water. They're all working on saved rainwater. And the supply and everything goes off from there. Okay? When there's drought, as there were last month when I was there, they warned you, stop using water unnecessarily. Okay, then the rains came in, and so fine, they replenish it. We do not heed to the law. And then there are laws, then there is no implementation of law. Your wildlife is totally going out of, total in extinction. There is no reforestation. Go into the Kashmir area, go and look into the Indian side. It's all green. What about us? It's all barren.
Sir,
And then
timber
your rivers,
mafia at its best over here.
so you look at the rivers, they change their directions. And when they change their directions, and then what we call flash floods, they just come out from nowhere. And then it just becomes, a bigger sort of a terrain. I think it's enough of our failures, Faisal. I think what we need to be doing is looking ahead. And looking ahead is start reviving your systems. What I've said, what the ambassador has said, revive your first line of civil defense. Civil defense, you've got to do it. You've got to train razakars. You've got to train people. And don't forget, they're not only for disasters, they are also in times of war. They are always there for you. So you always have people, who can work out and take the workload off the army. How much can the army do? They've got their other jobs to do. We put everything onto the army, and then we start criticizing the army. I think let's get out of this commercial. What we need to do is start planning. And the first thing I would say through your show is please build reservoirs. Please build reservoirs. Save water. You don't have water. And then whatever water you have, particularly in Sindh, there's unfiltered water going into the sea. Our sea is a state of filth. You can't even go into the sea. It stinks. Whereas in countries all over the world, people sell your sea and have.
Sir, we have
resorts.
not invested where we should have invested. And we all know that
Exactly.
this is not the priority. You see some politician in Sindh distributing 50 rupees, you don't even get 3-4 cigarettes from that 50 rupees, sir. Or you end up seeing, I'll take the name, Vasan Saab visiting his own village and then, pushing the people aside that they thought maybe this gentleman has come for the help. I mean, these are all realities, sir. Look at the
Well,
condition
this is
these poor people have been living in, sir. Larkana gets lots of funds. But look at the condition out there, sir.
But Faisal, but this is a litmus test for the entire nation and for the entire political leadership. The rich people, the rich politicians, they speak about the poor people. Let them come out and publicly give money. Let them come out, all of them.
Sir, this
The
is going to
government-
happen. If the kids will be dying from hunger and from thirst, these poor Haris or these poor farmers will come out and they'll do whatever is in their given capacity, sir. And that time is going to be a disaster, trust me. Coming to you, Kiani Saab, I've got last couple of minutes left, sir. I want your, your comment on the remedy, on the solution, sir. Mir Saab just mentioned about the reservoirs and infrastructure development. Now we need to understand that, see, this is the place where you're not supposed to have this. Rather, it should be made over here. I mean, because we have to live with this fact, sir. For how long can we ignore it?
I make one quick comment. I think the government, for the, as the realist theory, the government, unfortunately, instead of focusing on the floods, is under pressure from the opposition. So just like the person in the truck on the road, he's more concerned about what the man at the back giving a horn. So he cannot focus on the ahead. That is the problem. The realist. Second thing is, the government has already made international appeal. You look at the UN as Secretary General is coming. A lot of people. There is a mistrust is always there, but the government has done, and the foreign minister took a number of ambassadors on the helicopter ride about 6-7 days back and showed them what the devastation has caused in the incident. Sindh is the most devastated out of the 34 districts. 32 already submerged. The thing is, as I said, I will again emphasize on the revival of the local bodies to offset the pressure on the armed forces. They are required to do the internal security, they're required to do this thing, then civil defense, the fire brigade, and then the NDMA needs to be restructured in a manner that it prepares itself, trains itself during a period when there is no catastrophe. Our problem is somebody gave me an example like Pakistani would stand on a bus stand where the bus is not to come. Then somebody will tell them, please go across the road, there the bus will come. But you'll keep on standing till the bus starts running and then they start running after it. We have no planning. Unfortunately, successive governments have ignored the warnings of the environments of institutions which have told them to prepare. Now the thing is, if these people, even now, if anybody dies of hunger under the tents, if they have no tents, they die of not being vaccinated.
Kiani Saab, I'm so sorry to cut you because we are totally out of time, but you're absolutely spot on. We should start working on the planning, how to look after the cultivation process for the next season. We should be giving them the seeds from the government's quota. We should be looking on those lines at what is going to happen in 3 months' time, and we should start working now. Because I understand, they'll end up doing something of that sort, wasting the money once the season is going to go away. Because, sir, food security is the real problem. We all understand, sir. If you are buying tomatoes at 500 rupees a kg and onions at 450 rupees a kg, sir, then imagine what these poor people will go through. That is what the need of the hour is. But anyway, thank you very much, Kiani Saab. I would also like to thank P. Jamil Saab for your presence, sir. And it was a pleasure having you, sir, in the program. And that's all we have for this, sir. I'll see you, inshallah, tomorrow at 8:05 p.m. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Khuda Hafiz.